Okay. Derek, can you hear me? Yes. Derek, can you hear us? Oh, okay. Jess, can you hear me, Jess? Jess, can you hear me? Are you able to hear me, Jess? Hello, good morning, everyone. Can I please ask everyone to settle down? And in case there are friends and colleagues who are outside, I would request them to please join us in the room. I don't know if my voice is carrying, but if you're closer to the door and see somebody who's outside, just gesture them in. I think we're all set. No more people outside. All right. Good morning and welcome, everyone. My name is Priyanka. Some of you might know me as a person who has been coordinating with the 2023 TBHLM Affected Communities and Civil Society Coordination Hub. But today I am your MC for the next couple of hours. Right as I get started, I would like to say that I apologize if I pronounce any of the names on the agenda wrong today. My sincerest apologies for that. It's great to have all of you here, and it's so great to see some new faces and some old faces in the room. I'm really, really excited to be here. The event today, New TB Tools, is in Ending TB Finally Within Sight, is being sponsored by the Ministry of Health, Republic of Indonesia, and the Government of the Netherlands. And the event is being organized by the New Tools Product Development Partnership, FIND, TB Alliance, and IAB. This event will highlight current and future breakthroughs in the development and delivery of the new TB tools that are urgently needed to improve TB care, control, and prevention. All stakeholders, including member states, civil society, affected community members, and of course, industry, have a crucial role to play in making sure these tools reach the people who need it the most. And with this, I'd like to invite my friend, Louis Zepeda Tang, who is from Philippines. She is a TB survivor and also the founder of TB People Philippines. I invite her. Over to you.
I hope everybody hears me. So for new tool, I have a new tool. Thank you to Jessica for my new tool. This is my the last time I bought this kind of tool was 16 years ago when I was still trying to adapt the new tool and accept that I'll never see again. I had a case of tuberculosis meningitis. I was an architect before. I was doing my 2 years of polished work so that we can fly to another country for a better training. That was supposed to be the plan. And I had the signs and symptoms, but no cough. I did not understand what it's all about. But on the New Year's Eve of 2007, I fell in our staircase. And they rushed me to the hospital and they don't know what's happening. They just think that it's some virus, just a normal fever. And then they placed me to this room where they're just gonna be waiting for me to die. So they told my parents, please get a priest for her because she's about to go, she's a terminal state. And then all of them just rushed and transferred me to a better hospital. We what do you call it, paid $6,000 for that call this waiting for the results of all of my tests. They got me the spine fluid test, and that was I think 6 to 8 weeks supposed to be. But when I was transferred to the next hospital, that's where they confirmed to me that it's tuberculosis in the brain, and I was on a coma. They did not know how to wake me up for 3 days, but luckily, it's a divine intervention that I still woke up. And then once they were able to confirm that it's tuberculosis, they just gave me the first line medication. This was in 2007, so we had no gene expert. So they told me just drink this and then buy it and then just go home after 3 months of getting me out of the fragile state because I was also experiencing mild stroke. So I was experiencing partial paralysis, Parkinson's syndrome. I was actually having locked jaws. And then I was also having a lot of these fragile state, and everybody's just really trying to make me survive that time. So I was in that state for 3 months before they let me take home the medication, and it cost us $60,000. So a lot of catastrophic costs. After that event, that they told me, don't worry about the blurring of their vision if you go back after 6 months. But after 6 months, my neck just really blown up proportion. My dad told me, her neck is actually showing signs that it's going to blow up. So they rushed me again to the hospital, and then they told me, sorry, looks like the first time medication did not work for you. So they had to get me confined again, and then luckily we had a global fund received at that time to diagnose me properly. And then she told me, I will take care of you, even if I want to, curse all the doctors. She told me I'm gonna be okay. And then I was given the medication, and even if we had no means to actually test my spine fluid at that time, they just provided me the resistant treatment. Resistant treatment was done in the Philippines in 2007, right at the moment that I was resistant. And then luckily I was able to survive. And the thing is, there was no active drug safety monitoring that time. They did not really refer for me to because they did not prevent me to go blind. Because they told me to accept it as long as you're alive. So many injustices, so many things that are unfair when I was doing this treatment. And then when I heard about the new tools, I said, unfair. Why not during the time that I was at the peak of my career? I was supposed to be an architect with my husband, and it's just gonna be happening this decade. I mean, it's very slow. That's what I've been thinking the whole time I was listening to all of our new smear microscopy tools, new medications, but it has to happen somehow. And I'll just be there to witness everything and make sure this won't happen to anybody again. So I'm really hoping that maybe one of these days, new tools will be there for wellness. That maybe optic or atrophy, optic neuritis will be prevented, because everything's just changed for me. After I lost my vision, I had to change my career. Now I'm into politics. And thankfully, I have all of you as my guide, my angels, my invisible friend, and to make sure that I still have a purpose in this. So that's my opening for the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Louis, for those wonderful opening remarks. And with that, I would like to invite Pascal Grothe-Louis, Director General of International Cooperation of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands, on behalf of the Government of the Netherlands, who we are honored to welcome as a co-sponsor of today's event.
Okay. Hi. It is so sorry. I need more urgent and better methods and vaccines and diagnostics. So first, let me thank the organizers of the AVNI Fund and the TB Alliance for organizing the event on developing new TB tools. I think I would like to build on your words by focusing on 3 issues, namely 1, innovations, 2, strong health systems, and 3, the power of communities. This week is a crucial week for what's world's deadliest infection disease. We have the responsibility to reflect on what has been achieved since the last high-level meeting, and also on where we have fallen short. It's clear that we have to step up and invest in the development and delivery of new tools. We urgently need them to end TB. There's no real progress in global health without innovation, and TB is no exception. Why? Simply because there's no need for so many people to suffer from TB. We have the science, and now it's time to apply it. And therefore, we need new TB tools, including diagnostics, therapeutics, and medicines. But it's important to investigate how demand for and accessibility to these products can be increased. Moreover, investing in TB innovations is also needed to tackle antimicrobial resistance. And we need to step up in fighting drug-resistant tuberculosis. And I'm looking forward to learn more about this morning. So yes, new tools are needed urgently. And that is why the Netherlands supports product development partnerships like Yapi and Bind. The B2Ps represent a necessary model to bring together diverse stakeholders from both the public side and the private sector to join, develop innovative treatments. And only together, they can address poverty-related and neglected diseases such as TB that otherwise do not receive the attention and the investment that they need. As part of the global health strategy that we launched last year, the Netherlands government focuses on building strong and resilient health systems. I've been ambassador in Mozambique, and their years of experience in both the TB and the HIV/AIDS response. They taught us that the effectiveness and speed of fighting infectious diseases depend on a well-functioning health system. This brings me to another crucial ingredient for innovation in TB tools, an integrated way of working, including integration of tuberculosis and HIV services. Kingdom of the Netherlands also underlines the importance of long-term, flexible and balanced funding for global health. And that is why we increased our contribution to both the Global Fund, but also the implementing partners, WHO and UNAIDS, proportionately. TB is found in every country around the world, and every country can and should contribute to a global TB response that is centered around the needs of people. It's not about fighting an infectious disease, but it's about supporting people to prevent and treat illnesses. We must make sure that all TB tools are equitably available and accessible to all in need. Innovations not only lie at the tertiary level, but new tools should be particularly applicable at the community level. There where TB is spreading and where people live. To get the new tools working, it's crucial to involve effective and marginalized communities in all development stages of the new TB tools. Nothing about them without them. Addressing stigma and discrimination is key for success. Exclusion of people is an important bottleneck in the use of new TB tools. So let me end by saying, the Netherlands is committed to the development and rollout of new TB tools. By collaborating, governments, private, public sector, science and communities, we will be way more effective in our support for people at risk or living with TB. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General Pascal Grothendieck, for the remarks. And now I invite Sandra Galina, Director General for Health and Food Safety of DG SANTE of the European Commission, to provide.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. And things out there, and you wonder why the means are not reaching those who need it. You really wonder. So we should be starting from a few numbers. I think I'm a numbers person. You know them all. You say is ending TB finally within sight. I like this. This week, everybody sounds very optimistic here, so I will not quench this optimism, but the numbers don't look very good. And there is also an issue of the quality. Who is affected by TB most these days? So if we were to look at 21 alone, we would have 1.6 million people. That basically, it's a huge jump in the number of people that have had, I would say, TB as the reason for the death, and then 11 million even were in that very year affected by the issue. And this is a year when we had COVID, which was a year when people were particularly attentive. And I speak coming from a city, Brussels, where if you go into the metro, you can really pray that you don't get TB, because TB is one of the things that you get there. So let me say to you, 11 million people getting it, but who is getting it most is, unfortunately, disproportionately, this burden falls on the most vulnerable, on the fragile people, marginalized communities, those suffering from HIV. I would say that the pandemic didn't help because it disrupted the healthcare services. So the story today that we have just heard might have been even worse during COVID. So everything is even much more difficult for those in need. And then there are these multi-resistant, multi-drug resistant cases. We were just talking about this because one of the areas that is afflicted by this is South Africa. The reasons for that we may discuss, but it's a very important area for the operations, I would say, of the host of this event, so it's very worrying. It's very worrying. Of course, everybody will be exhorting each other to more collective action. But I think that we need, first of all, to have the right tools in the right places. So this is, if we want to eradicate, I think we need to really go after that. And if you allow me, I would really like to praise publicly the TB Alliance for doing such passionate work to still be very committed on this disease, which is so difficult to eradicate for also social reasons, that we all know. So delivering the drugs to those in need would hopefully avoid what we have just heard. Now, four or five things I would like you to bear in mind. So first of all, I think we need to ensure the access to the treatments. This is not easy. It means that, there needs to be some primary healthcare structures. So, huge program. We are discussing this also within WHO. It's not easy to have primary healthcare. It's even in my own country, the primary healthcare, I would say, structures made a huge difference to how COVID came and went. So, primary healthcare for poor or rich nations is the first link of the, I would say, of a virtuous chain. So we need something which looks like equitable access in that respect for the primary healthcare. The second thing is that I would suggest that we need to prioritize support for marginalized and more vulnerable parts of society. So good that everybody gets its treatment, but I would say that if we were to help the TB Alliance, I would suggest that we support the TB Alliance and this outpost amongst the most marginalized communities. That is my wish. Then, what to say? Prevention, guys. Prevention. Prevention also includes early detection. In very poor communities, that's very, very difficult. But I may say to you that public awareness, promoting, I would say, a way of testing that is, I would say, not so complicated. I mean, if you work with the communities, they will help you. They will help you. Then, of course, you need the diagnosis, you need the surveillance, you need the more professionalized part. But if a community is aware of the symptoms, it's quite important that we invest on that. Now, the fourth element, I think, is that we should be exploiting rapid molecular diagnostics, treatments, regimens for drug-resistant tuberculosis. But I would say we need to think a bit more of digitalization to somehow reach the ones that need to be reached quickly. Yeah. So this requires a bit of innovation. I'm sure that you know what I'm talking about. But this is also in the spirit of enhancing equity, because the fastest action goes for the richest people. That's not necessarily what we like. Fifth, we should be, obviously, as everybody will be saying this week for any other disease, we should be intensifying research, development. I think that it is important to facilitate the access to TB vaccines. Again, this is an issue that concerns the low and middle income countries most. So we need to be present there. On all these fronts with European Commission, we are very much present. We are very much aware of what we can do with partners, be they national, be they stakeholders. You know, we are trying to do our utmost. If I took out a bit the amounts that we have been spending since 2014, well, why 2014? Because for us, it's like sort of a budgetary moment. And I saw that we spent 650 million. This was not enough, but you know, we have, I would say, clear top marks for this disease amongst our budget. So perhaps we definitely need more, but we have a huge allocation for TB. Now, we have been funding most of what I have been saying, but let me tell you that for me, what was most important is that we have been earmarking 22 million very recently for whatever is related to drug resistance, to AMR, and there is tuberculosis on it. So I hope that something will come out from that type of studies. Now, we need to be global. We need to be truly inclusive. We need to be thinking of the most vulnerable part of society. So if I may, I would like to thank all the civil society partners who do what we cannot do as bureaucrats. You really know where it hurts. What you do is really precious because we cannot reach what is out there. We have been supporting, I would say, regularly funds on different diseases. So I don't want to make anybody invidious. We have been supporting AIDS, we have been supporting tuberculosis, we have been supporting malaria. But I would like to say that this money between 2023 was totaling some 4.3 million. Not enough, as I say, but at least we are trying to be present everywhere. We also, I would say, are very keen on drugs for neglected diseases. This initiative is very precious because, you know, tuberculosis risks to be one of those because, you know, people take it for granted that this is an old disease. No, we want to further finance that. And there is a big issue concerning exactly clinical trials and exactly the sub-Saharan realities, which I have alluded to more specifically for one country, but I would say it could apply also to other countries. So in my view, we need to get back to our roadmap or our wishes under the Sustainable Development Goals. You know, we were trying to certainly solve also tuberculosis. But the problem is that this is a global challenge, requires global solutions. So we need to be a more harmonious, I would say, set of countries if we want to really be helping each other. So thank you again, especially to the, I would say, for the human story that we have had this morning. I think I will certainly cherish this. On the other hand, we need to say thank you to those like the TB Alliance that do continue hard work, even in very hostile ground, because it's not a very fashionable tuberculosis, let me say. So this is why I chose this event of all many events that I could attend. And I thank you all for your very, very kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you. And I personally and all people present here probably couldn't agree more that if you work with the communities will work with you. And it's really, really encouraging to know that both the sponsors and the organizers for the event today definitely keep it right at the helm of all things that they do. With that, I want to invite Dr. Teresa Kaseva, Director, Global TB Program, World Health Organization, to provide the framing remarks ahead of the three presentations on new TB diagnostics, treatments, and vaccines. Over to you, Dr. Teresa.
Thank you very much. Everyone, all my very pleasant. Yes, I've done my part of
retreat or marathon, I don't know, from the US building here. It was quite refreshing, healthy, and a good opportunity to think and to frame your messages to this very important and motivated audience. There is no need to request for your attention, for commitments. You are already strongly committed, and you are representing core driving force of all TB community that are inspired and really aimed to end TB by 2030. Many things happened since the high-level meeting over the past 5 years in this fast changing and with a lot of challenges world. We're also receiving opportunities, and we should be objectives. Not only the unprecedented pandemic happened with the devastating impact on TB response, but also jointly we managed to push forward agenda with development of new important tools, diagnostics, new treatment options, and even now we have vaccines in our pipelines, which was unbelievable even 5-6 years ago. So that's why my request to all of us, stay optimistic and opportunistic, try to find the best possible way to implement these existing tools. If we will look at the progress, of course, you can see all the details in our global TB report. And by the way, in a few days, we will launch some updates in terms of progress towards our targets. So yes, we didn't achieve our targets, but we've made significant progress. And especially if you look country by country, some of the countries, high-burden, low-income countries, even despite of the challenges, they made this progress. And of course, it's well known that the incidence decline is slow. It's about 2% per year. We need it till 2025, at least 10%, beginning from 25 to achieve our targets. We needed at least 17%. We're lagging behind, but some countries are moving. Even a 10% decline in incidence, more decline in mortality is happening. And it means that they're trying to use maximum of the existing opportunities. But without new tools, of course, we cannot move forward. And we have 3-4 times better options for the drug-resistant treatment. Yes, email all the colleagues who are working with us. We're pushing forward this agenda together to make the uptake of the VPLM and VIVAL regimens as fast as possible. Today, we've heard very inspiring news. Finally, it happened due to the results of this advocacy. Some decrease in the price for our essential diagnostics announced by Global Fund. Of course, we expected that it would happen much more earlier, but it's driving us again, be positive. Tomorrow we are very inspired. We will have first ever event with a high-level focus on TB vaccines development. We are launching Global TB Vaccine Accelerator Council. And this was initiative of Director General. He told that if it was possible to use this mechanism for COVID vaccines development, why it's not possible to do for TB vaccines. And we've seen timeliness of this decision and growing interest to this area of work. Now we are also with the satisfaction looking to the growing pipelines of the clinical trials. About 22 different clinical trials are ongoing, and even those addressing some challenging issues like TB preventive treatment or concepts of those with the drug-resistant tuberculosis and many other difficult options. Yes, the progress is there, we are moving forward, but there is space for the optimization, for better work together. And when we are sharing our messages to the donors, to the potential and existing, we should be unanimous. Because I can give you one example. Sorry for speaking maybe a bit more than 3 minutes, but for me it's a great opportunity in front of this audience. I had a very interesting talk. I will not give the name, with one of the well-known experts for a long time in TB field, telling about new opportunities, new diagnostics, new treatment options. And he was listening, and at the end he told me, oh, yes, that all is good, but let's be realistic. We have limited resources. Maybe smear microscopy should still be considered as a good option.
What can you tell? If we will continue as community sharing these messages, will go nowhere. It will not be helpful at all. That's why these unanimous messages pushing forward innovations. If we agree that some communities may use diagnostic by symptoms of microscopy, others can benefit from the rapid molecular test, it means that we agree with inequities. The access for the best possible options existing today based on evidence should be everywhere. And this is true proof that we are following the right principles. So we'll not go further. I'm really happy to see progress. WHO is committed to continue working with you, and we are trying to go beyond, as you could see, our traditional mandate, setting the scene for the priorities, research priorities, putting questions, developing targeted products profiles, and we will continue prioritizing research and advocate for fundraising for research further together with you. And thank you very much for great collaboration.
Thank you, Dr. Kasayeva. With this, we get into the section of the program where we will have 3 presentations. I must remind all of my presenters that you have 10 minutes each. And with that, I bring to you the first presenter from FIND, Kavindra Velan, Senior Scientist. Over to you.
We'll see what I can do if that is.
Very much, Bianca, for that introduction. Your Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for making the time to attend our session today. We are really hoping that you will go away even galvanized and enthusiastic about what lies ahead of us. I think the previous speakers have highlighted the urgency and the need for us to have these to take us towards this ambitious agenda of eliminating our life cycle. I thought us being in New York and thinking about the food culture here that I would sort of start off with an analogy, which is that I think what we're trying to offer you today is very much akin to a 3-course meal that you find at a really good restaurant here in New York. I'm going to be the first course in that meal and set the stage, hopefully for my my colleagues who will speak to the remaining elements. So I will touch on diagnostics and diagnostic tools. So before I begin, I thought I would firstly start with just a very quick background slide on FIND. I think FIND's reputation is quite well known for those in the audience, but for those who are joining us for the first time and of course those online, just to say FIND is a product development partnership. This year marks the 20-year anniversary of its initiation, and we've been involved in a number of aspects related to diagnostics, being a big area for FIND. More recently, we were the co-convener of Access to COVID-19 Tools Accelerator, ACT-A, and have been for many years the WHO Collaborating Center for Diagnostics. And under that, with that context in mind, FIND certainly has supported efforts towards generating evidence to support policy. And I thought I would start briefly with just some context of why this meeting is so important and why we are really pushing to work closer across the different areas along the care cascade. And what you see here is really just a sort of an adaptation of the typical care cascade. And what I would like to highlight here is just the fact that there is attrition across all elements along this care cascade. And if one were to start on the very left, which is that undiagnosed patient that's in the community, I think the challenge is how do we try and identify them earlier? Within the context that the earlier we diagnose people, the more we limit morbidity and mortality. And what you see at the very bottom of the screen in the red boxes is really some of the known challenges across these different areas of the cascade. And I think beginning with the idea that we really have to be more active in our pursuit of finding those undiagnosed cases, relying less on passive case finding people presenting to facilities, and of course, developing the relative tools that are required to investigate those individuals earlier in that disease progression. Of course, when we move to the screening step, I think our reliance on symptoms is another big challenge for identifying those with TB. And I think a number of TB prevalence surveys highlight that challenge and why we need to think about newer tools such as digital chest X-ray and computer-aided detection software. But moving to the TB testing piece, and which is most relevant to the discussion for my presentation, I think there's, of course, a big reliance on sputum-based testing. And again, all of this links back to, if we find people earlier, getting that particular sample may not be as easy. And of course, there are certain populations, such as those living with HIV and the children, where getting a sputum sample in of itself is quite challenging. The placement of tests, I think, are also an area that we need to be rethinking, moving diagnostics more into the community, more towards where the patients are being evaluated. And lastly, not forgetting that we need to close that loop from diagnosis to treatment. And I think while I represent the diagnosis piece of the care cascade, I think what we're trying to do with the meeting today is really highlight that there has to be this linkage to care and treatment. Otherwise, our efforts are really diluted. In addition, I'd also like to emphasize that, which was highlighted by one of the previous speakers, we do need to invest in prevention. So even up to the top of the end of this cascade, there are opportunities to think about how do we scale up prevention, whether that is vaccine that hopefully will be coming in the distant future, or preventive therapy in high-risk populations, as well as those that are had TB excluded, for that scale up to happen in the most accelerated manner. So just to tee that up for my subsequent speakers to touch on. I think what's important to look at from that opening is really that we have to move away from a one-size-fits-all model. I think historically we thought that there's one approach that's going to address the challenges across all these geographies where TB remains a problem. And I think in reality, finding tools that can address the specific needs in these settings and among these populations. And this slide is really just talking to some of the key areas that we need to try and move towards that momentum, towards bringing down costs, improving the performance of what the tests that we do have, and of course, moving towards this agenda of multi-pathogenizing the infrastructure. So looking at testing that can go beyond TB, because that's what's going to allow us to have sustainable infrastructure in the future. And that needs to be considered at all levels within the health system. And that brings me to this issue of levels within the health system. So I think what's important to reflect here is that we need different tools, that one tool is not going to solve the problem. And in fact, it's and at home and in the communities, we probably need much more point of care, because getting those patients to the health facilities may not always be possible. And if we are also trying to reduce catastrophic costs, I think we have to be able to have the tools that allow us to limit those aspects for patients seeking care as well. And of course, think about what tools will be needed across all these different levels. Now, of course, with that context in mind, and through a very generous round through Unitaid, FIND has been developing a package which we are aptly calling Drive DX for TB. And this is an ambitious 4-year project that started in August of last year, which is aimed at accelerating the introduction of new TB diagnostics. So really trying to find the tools that are going to plug the holes in this care cascade that I just highlighted. And the way that we're really approaching this is to really be an exemplar for how this hopefully can happen going forward. And that is to really emphasize engagement with the key stakeholders upfront in this process. Rather than assuming that we know what the solution is, really working with the countries that are affected, civil society, all of these key stakeholders, to set the agenda for the type of tools that are required that can then be taken to the manufacturers and developed, so that when they are ready, they address a very specific need. And we're not trying to, fit a round peg in a square hole, so to speak. So this project is really about generating evidence to support the likes of the WHO and Dr. Kaseva's team to inform policies that are going to be, taken forward and recommended for countries to consider, but also making sure that the evidence we generate will also accelerate adoption in the country. And what you see on this left-hand side of the screen is the package of information that we hope to generate as part of this project. Of course, as I mentioned, the key recipient here would be WHO, but of course the countries are being taken along this journey with us. And for the sake of this project, we focus on 4 archetype countries. South Africa, Indonesia, Kenya, and India. And of course, these are, very instrumental countries in driving the agenda for TB, both from the perspective of how they've adopted new innovation, but also in terms of absolute numbers of cases that are going to drive the demand for other countries to also benefit, particularly from a cost perspective. And of course, the downstream activities are equally important. This is being led by the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine by a complementary grant. And the idea would be that they generate much more of the downstream, patient-important outcomes that could inform stronger recommendations for uptake. Lastly, just to say that the project will have a very strong focus on civil society and community engagement, among many other complementary activities. And we believe this is very important to ensure that the project reaches the impact that we hope to achieve with this disruptive approach. Very quickly, just to highlight the classes of technology we're pursuing. The first one is an ultra-sensitive LAM assay, which we're calling a third generation iteration. The second is, and I think the previous speaker may have touched on this, a point of care, or as I've reflected here, near point of care molecular diagnostic, which utilizes a non-sputum-based sample, in this case, a tongue swab, that can provide a rapid result within 20 minutes. So really bringing down the time to result, but also that is portable and can be taken into the settings where patients at this stage are not seeking care. Lastly, in this class that we now know is, the likes of GeneXpert and the TrueNAT solution from Mobio, the low complexity NAT class, to really try and bring more competitiveness into that space that can also provide a broader suite of drug resistance targets. Again, these are all needed as we advance newer regimens, and of course, bring down the costs that are benefits to all the communities. Lastly, on this technology front, to say, as many are probably aware in the audience here, that sequencing has now been recommended by the WHO through the efforts of a complementary Seek and Treat grant, which was also through UNITAID, which generated some of the evidence among many other partners that provided data to support some of the conditional recommendations for the use of sequencing, particularly to support some of the newer drugs which are not currently captured through molecular testing. And I think this is an important platform for us to build on as we think collectively about how we advance aspects along the care cascade. My concluding slide is really one to perhaps say philosophically that we really need to work more closely, more synergistically, if we are to achieve these ambitious targets, and that we should not forego quality in our attempt to bring about these new innovations. And of course, making sure that we bring all these innovations, the technologies across the complete care cascade, prevention and treatment. And that, to reflect on the slide here with the snail, is really to just tongue in cheek around how we've been thought about in the TB community of being very slow to adopt innovation compared to some other disease areas, right? And I really believe we are at this watershed moment where we can actually get onto that skateboard and race towards those targets that Dr. Seva mentioned, and really realize this ambition that I think we all collectively hope to achieve. Thank you very much. I'll stop here.
Thank you for the presentation. And next, I'd like to invite Ms. Friedman, President and Chief Executive Officer of TB.
Want to use the clicker or just click on here? You can click them. That would be the easiest, up or down. That works. I can also do it.
Great. Thank you very much. So let me just start by thanking everyone for coming today. Not easy to maneuver around this city in this area for today. But what I really want to thank you for in advance, you can't hear me? A little loud. Okay. What I really want to thank everybody for is not coming today for what you're going to do, I'm sure, after you leave today. Not tomorrow, not just the next day, but for the real future moving forward. Because that's what really is all about is what we collectively do together to ultimately eradicate TB. And for that, I really want to thank all of you, because seeing so many old friends who are here today whom I haven't seen now, you know, from pre-COVID to others, it really is a pleasure. So let me start. What I wanted to do in the next 10 minutes is basically just discuss the advances, just to give everyone an idea of what's been happening, because sometimes it's not completely obvious to everybody that there really are advances, and especially the focus that I will take because of just the TB Alliance is focused on TB drugs in the TB drug arena. That's only if I can get it to work. Okay. And good. Okay. I feel better. I'm not the only one who's technologically totally challenged. So anyhow, let me just review over the recent years what's happened in the field of TB drug development. So we really have seen fairly major breakthroughs in TB therapy, both for latent infection, of which I just want to remind everybody, there's only 1.5 billion people in the world who are infected with the TB organism. That is the reservoir that feeds, in addition to transmission from active TB. So we've had, for latent TB, you know, tremendous progress over a relatively short period of time. I want to get to that later. That's still way too slow for what should happen. See regulatory approvals, new guidelines, and rollout of a 6-month all-oral highly effective ERTB treatment. By that I mean over 90% cure rate. See guidelines and increasing momentum for a 4-month treatment for drug-sensitive TB, the first time in 50 years that the treatment of drug-sensitive TB has been shortened. And we've now seen the availability of a 1-month treatment, which also not that long ago was 6 months for the treatment of latent infection. I just refer everyone to here we don't have time today. If you want to look at the global portfolio, to look at this website, tbdrugs.org, drugs, and for the TB Alliance portfolio at our website at tballiance.org. This gives you again a flavor of the progress that's been made. Moving forward for today, though, I'm just going to focus on the drug resistant TB advances, obviously, because we don't have time in 10 minutes to go through all the areas. So if we look at what's happened, I think there was a brief allusion to this. Over the course of the last few years, we've seen an advance in the 3 and 4 drug combination of therapy. All oral drugs now that are based on the Daquilin, with or without the addition of moxifloxacin. And just to highlight the timing of all this, Bertomanid was first approved by the first regulatory authority in the world in 2019. Initially for the treatment of just XDR-TB and then treatment intolerant response or non-responsive drug-resistant MDR-TB. And I just want to highlight, since 2019, we've already had 2 improvements on that initial 3-drug approval from the FDA. So that now we have indications for through the WHO guidance for all MDR-TB basically. And also we have shown that you can both decrease the nasal dose to make it a much better, safer regimen, and also add a drug like moxifloxacin potentially efficacy. So, you know, things are moving, not as quickly certainly as we would like to see them move, but unbelievably quickly by certainly what we've seen in the past decades. And I just want to highlight what is the real benefit of this treatment. what we have gone to is from a success rate of 30% historically to over 90%. We have gone from having injectables and quite a number of patients to just it's of what we have to have in global TV. So let me move on. Where do we stand with this? Because innovation, we've always associated innovation with research and development. That is totally inadequate. Innovation has to be employed also in getting drugs to people. It has to complement the research and development technical side. And just to highlight, over a very brief period of time, we now have of the 30 high DRTV burden countries, we've now gotten 17 regulatory approvals and 6 of them are pending. If we look at the uptake, those countries have access to those, especially as a new one. We now have gotten to the point where we've got over 70 countries that have ordered and received Protominib and the regimen, that they have the ability to give them. And I do want to compliment our WHO colleagues, because if you look at this slide, when did this really begin to take off? It was with the WHO communication recommending this regimen. And again, if you look at the numbers of drugs, the number of treatment courses that have we now are up to over 7,000. I have not had what happened in the first 2 years or 3 years of those approvals. This is dramatically different. And I don't want to go through, I don't have time to go through all of these, but this process that has resulted in what you've just seen on the last 2 slides has taken a huge amount of effort. It does not happen by itself. From both the TB Alliance access initiatives, from our partners in Korea that have been stepped up to the plate, Koika, and funded really the biggest component, Access Europe, and this progress, and the most progress, which I won't have time to talk about, was in Ukraine in the middle of the invasion and the war, which is an amazing story that was help funded by Koika. What's next? This is probably even more important. Is number one, what are the priorities now? Because we certainly can't rest on the laurels of what's happened in so far. And what is on tap next? And really, again, I will not go into all of these points because we don't have time, but we are trying to dramatically expand the access through a whole variety of innovative approaches. The big problem, frankly, is funding for those approaches, which is the big problem for, I believe, all TB, where we can really even ramp up these curves even more. What's next in the area of TB drug R&D? Here, there's really fairly exciting work that is yet to be done. Number one, our goal is shorter and simpler TB regimens. We want to get down to really weeks to months of treatment and do it with a what's called universal regimen with all new drugs. And I certainly don't want to put Find out of business, but to a certain extent, that's the goal. Is that yes, we will need to be able to diagnose TB both new drugs, universal regimen. The amount of drug sensitivity testing that needs to be done would be cut to a bare minimum. The other area is, which is really exciting that we've been working on, is the area of long-acting injectables. This, as some of you may know, has been utilized now in HIV and a variety of other diseases. And just to give you an idea of what is the potential, that is not just potential, but is definitely feasible. for latent infection for the 1.5 billion people, it is totally possible that all of those people can be treated in one day, diagnosed and treated here within the time. And that is that you come in the morning, you get a rapid test to show that you have latent infection, get a shot that day with a long-acting injectable, you're done. That is the paradigm that we're looking for. And in drug sensitive and drug resistant TB and active TB, one could also imagine a very short run-in course of perhaps 2 to 4 weeks, one injection, and that's it. So again, we don't have time to go through all of that, but that is clearly on the horizon. What stands in our way of being able to do it? Or it will be done. The question is, will it be done in 5 years or will it be done in 50 years? That is the real question that has to be answered. And I think we all know what the preferred answer is if the funding allows for that. And on the earlier stage of research and development pipeline, we are actively using artificial intelligence, post-directed therapy, all of the advances that all of you have seen, especially in the oncology field, on the immunotherapeutic approaches. Those are readily applicable to infectious diseases and also to TB. But obviously, again, that takes time and money, but that is clearly on the horizon. With that, let me thank you all very, very much, and hope to see you all later.
For that presentation. IRB, and post this, I will be handing over to Mike Frick, co-director of TAG's TB project, to take the podium for some questions and move us through the next section of the program. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the sponsors and the organizers for their kind invitation for me to address this important audience on the topic of TB vaccine development. I'd also like to thank the funders who make our work at IAVI possible, some of whom are represented in this audience. I'm going to be talking first about the TB vaccine pipeline, and then discussing highlighting three candidates in advanced development, and finally talk about why TB vaccine development is a good investment, both from an economic and humanitarian perspective. This is the TB vaccine pipeline, an important and dense slide developed by the Working Group of New Vaccines for the Stop TB Partnership. The key message for this morning is that this is a historic time in the development of TB vaccines. Never before in history have there been this many vaccines being assessed for efficacy against TB. I'm going to be highlighting three of the vaccines in advanced development this morning. One is VPM-1002, which is a recombinant BCG vaccine. Another is M72-AS01E, an adjuvanted subunit vaccine. And the third is MTBVac, a live attenuated MTB vaccine. I think you'll notice that each of these vaccines employs a different strategy for vaccination. And this is important because it allows for an assessment of different strategies in trying to protect against tuberculosis, thereby potentially improving our chances of actually getting it right. VPM-1002 is a recombinant BCG vaccine. It was designed to elicit an enhanced immune response as compared to BCG. It was developed by the Vaccine Project Management Group in Hanover, Germany, and the Serum Institute of India. Currently, it's ongoing. There's three phase 3 trials ongoing. One is for prevention of TB disease in more than 12,000, nearly 13,000 household contacts of people living with TB in India. The second is a trial assessing the potential of this vaccine in preventing de novo MTB infection, comparing VPM 102 to BCG in nearly 7,000 infants in 5 sub-Saharan African countries. And the third phase 3 is an assessment of VPM 102's ability to prevent recurrent TB. That is, prevent people who have had TB, been cured of TB, and then are at risk of having a recurrent bout of TB. This is a phase 2 to 3 trial being conducted in 2,000 adults in India and Bangladesh. The second vaccine I'd like to highlight is M72-AS01E. As I've mentioned, this is an adjuvanted subunit vaccine. M72 actually already has efficacy data that was accrued in a phase 2B proof of concept study. In this study, more than 3,500 HIV negative adults were assessed for prevention of TB disease. This was a study conducted by GSK and Harris. In the widely publicized results that were published in 2018 in New England Journal, the vaccine efficacy was noted to be approximately 50%. This was based on a first case definition of having at least one positive bacteriological test. There are actually 6 tests done in 3 sputums collected over a period of a week if an individual was assessed to be having symptoms of TB. However, in a sensitivity analysis in this study, where at least 2 bacteriological tests were required, which reduced the chance of false positives, in fact, the vaccine efficacy was found to be 68%. And so the results that were widely appreciated may actually underestimate what this vaccine could deliver. So to assess this, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Wellcome Trust have committed to conducting a phase 3 trial of M72-AS01E to begin in 2024. And they have committed a robust fund of $550 million, that kind of investment, to conduct this study. The objective of the trial is to assess the efficacy at preventing progression from latent TB infection to active pulmonary TB. Approximately 26,000 individuals, including people living with HIV and without TB infection, will be enrolled, basically in Africa and Southeast Asia. This commitment of $550 million represents almost 5 times what the world spent on TB vaccine development in 2021. But it's noted that this is entirely coming from philanthropies. And this is basically the story of TB vaccine development. So much of the burden of funding these studies comes from philanthropies. And I think to accelerate the development of TB vaccines, we need greater participation in funding these studies from governments and other sources. Finally, I'm going to talk about MTBVAC. MTBVAC is a live attenuated vaccine directly derived from a disease-causing isolate of MTB. So it's unlike BCG, it's unlike VPM 102, in that it actually comes from MTB itself, and so contains the full complement of antigenic targets of MTB. It's important from an access consideration in that it's a single-dose vaccine and it's a low-cost manufacturing process, offering the potential for broad access. I wish I had time to go through this diagram. It's actually pretty neat. If anyone wants to talk to me afterwards about it, I'll take you through it because it's very interesting to see what those genetic deletions that resulted in the attenuation do. That's what this diagram talks about, but we don't have time to go through it. MTBVAC is in late stage development in a number of different studies. There was a phase 2A conducted and completed where it was proven to be safe and immunogenic in HIV negative individuals. And we found the appropriate dose for that. There's going to be a phase 2A study assessing safety and immunogenicity in HIV infected individuals that are well controlled on ART. That's going to be conducted by the HDTN associated with the Division of AIDS and NIAID. We are planning a phase 2B in adolescents and adults in approximately 4,300 HIV uninfected individuals. And we are planning to start that study in 2024. And there's an ongoing phase 3 study in infants for assessment in preventing TB disease. So the WHO has published an important investment case for new TB vaccines. And the important message of that very valuable publication is that investing in TB vaccines pays off economically. So for every dollar invested for a 50% effective vaccine, it is estimated that a return of $7 in terms of averted health costs and increased productivity would result over the next 25 years. But more important, there's an important humanitarian consideration in investing in TB vaccine development, because it's estimated that by developing a vaccine that's 50% effective in preventing disease in adolescents and adults, over 25 years, 8.5 million deaths and 76 million new TB cases would be prevented. And I want to add to that, in that we've talked a lot about AMR. Well, one of the best ways of preventing AMR is to prevent pressure for developing new AMR strains. And you do that by preventing disease. So I think it's important to consider TB vaccines as an essential component of a global AMR strategy. And I think it's also important to reemphasize that so much of the burden of the funding for TB vaccines is coming from philanthropists. And I can tell you personally that it sometimes takes more time to raise the funds to conduct a phase 3 study or phase 2B study than it does to conduct the study. And this is a problem. So if we've got a product and we've got people ready to actually do the studies, it would be really helpful to have the funding available to actually conduct the studies rather than have to wait. So I want to thank you all for your attention.
Lou, and thank you to the 3 presenters. And like Priyanka introduced me earlier, taking over for this next part of our event. And I want to invite the 3 panelists to come to the front, because we do have about 5 or 6 minutes for questions. We want to create the opportunity for people in the audience to ask a question or two. So Lou, Mel, Vindran, you can find a seat here. And if you have a question that you would like to ask in the audience, please raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you. While you're thinking of questions, I want to actually ask all 3 presenters to comment more on something that's been alluded to, especially on the vaccine presentation, which is the money. But it hasn't quite been articulated today exactly how little money TB science is getting, and how much we need to take advantage of some of the truly enormous promise that we have in these 3 pipelines right now. So if you could just comment specifically on the financial need, and then I'll come to Leslie about this.
One of the many questions
$100 billion in 1 year, which was the COVID estimate in the first year of the pandemic, or we spread it out for 24 months. Okay. No, I just wanted to test our result. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, thanks. So hopefully the fact that there's and I think funding percentage and as opposed to trying to write these things, let's all come together, table, and pick up yes. It's probably always been for more funding. Certainly, very hard. I think the more we try to collaborate and invest, especially when
I'm going to be really quick. These two studies, to concept and de-risk. I'm wondering if you have sufficient funding, you can skip this. Get your images, get your dose. You show that there's a very sufficient to then go into a licensure study. And you can build in utility analysis, try to make that licensure study as efficient as possible. No one's here to waste. But when you're talking about an issue that's critically important as TB and the need for a vaccine, it would be a really good investment to have some kind of fund that would enable developers to say, okay, well, we've gone through this, got our safety. Now, don't spend 4 years trying to raise money for licensure study. You're funded for it. Go do it, and then report as you do your utility analysis forward through your phase 3. That's one. The other is that pipeline I showed was tactful. I think a whole lot of vaccines. Well, the half-empty part to get vaccines in phase 1. And the reason is because there's not a lot of support for basic research in vaccine development to allow researchers to number one enter to develop their products to the point where other people I think 1, 2 things is we try to improve what I'm getting here is a bunch of vaccines. Yeah, typically that's 10 years ago. But now that investment market dried up, virtually nothing coming in top speed and needs of money.
Thank you very much. Some questions, comment. Really exciting developments. But it's also extremely frustrating that none of this is available in a country where I come from. So what I'm trying to say is that let's save some of that sentiment till the people on the ground get it. New tools are fantastic, but if they don't reach the people who need them, I think we're failing to some extent. TV seems to be quite top things too. People who can create the demand are in the ground level. We saw in COVID when people raised their voices because people were dying all around us. Things moved really fast. So in TV, we don't have the same because we're not investing. I don't mean just in terms of money, but in the communities that can actually walk with you hand in hand to raise that voice and create that demand. I was really surprised when I was reading a report that one of the biggest donors in TV spends 0.002% for community systems. So I just want us to think that from developing a tool to the time it reaches the person, there is a pathway that we need to look at till it reaches the person. So just calling out to you, sharing the frustration. But I'm really glad that TV Alliance 5 have come on board to really take on civil society and partner with communities to make this a reality. So thank you very much.
But yeah, no, I think that's important. And I can tell you that part of the vaccine development, we have very active action group that does exactly that. Some of the folks who are involved that are actually organizing. So here you potential to develop. Thank you very much. I think that when I see the team, I'm like, I mean, new tools, new ways of team is not a problem. This, when the person is resources actually funded proportionately in the primary investment of research and also in investing out of additional assets. I think disproportionately on this side of the company, they need to, but they are not thinking of new ways of delivery. And I think we need to call on donors and partners that these are not so exclusive and they are not in a linear order. When we should really need to stress the business development sounds on the good thing that way. The thing about that is how do you get to the future before they start developing? And that is the way we should handle it going on. Reason the life mind is important as the company we do. So the question is, what could we do collectively to research and investment in research is incomplete until there is also a research on how to the exposure.
One last question, then we need to move on. We're going to take one last comment from Dr. Kaseyeva, and then I'll introduce our next program.
We really studied this potential. Then related to the event, and we've been working closely as the representatives of the but they're kind of silently sitting, but they've done great job. We should acknowledge their efforts. They managed to negotiate to convincingly speak about this situation. For dramatic here and including patients. It was not an easy process, but they managed to do this in addition to this whole moment of operation.
We're the perfect panel discussion because everybody is talking about innovation is great, but it's meaningless if it doesn't actually reach people who need it. Equitable access is not needed. And that's what we want to get into on the panel. And to frame the panel, I'm going to invite Dr. Subhanam Sakhi, Deputy Executive Director of Sakhi Partnership, to kick us off with some framing remarks, and then I'll introduce the panelists for fine chairs.
To be there in New York City in the week that the high-level meeting is happening this Friday, and a lot of meetings happening on TB. So it's great to see all of you here. I'm just coming from a meeting where 7 heads of states expressed their political commitment to NTB through their health ministers, and there was a coalition of leaders launched. I will go into another meeting which is celebrating innovations. It's a TB Innovation Summit. Led by the private sector, very interesting meeting. So I just wanted to say a few words here. I think listening to the discussion here, there are 2 things in this context that we should be discussing. We are very clear that the TB response is off track. We will not reach the SDG, the 3 targets of ending TB by 2030 if we continue business as usual. So in this context, we are talking about 2 things. I think some people in the comments highlighted very well. Number 1, to get the new tools, to get the money, the research behind it, so that the new tools are available. But new tools themselves will not save lives, will not help us to reach the SDG goal. So then we need, as Guidardo put it, new ways of delivering the tools so that people can get access. And here it's very important. We heard 3 panelists about the tools that we need, also how the tools can be scaled up. Now, I think it should be unacceptable that today we have a disease which can be prevented, diagnosed, treated. Of course, there are limitations in the tools, yet 3 million people each year are not getting access to diagnosis. 3 million people each year. Those who get access to diagnosis, half of them are not getting the modern tools that we had for 10 years, like rapid molecular test, GeneXpert. They're not being used at scale. We have even new tools coming, very exciting now in the very exciting tools already there and some in the pipeline. There are now tools that can screen people with X-ray, not in the hospital, but in the community. Artificial intelligence is now reading X-rays better than trained radiologists. So these things are happening, but in limited scale. We need to scale it up. So while we have the ambition of getting new tools, we should also be prepared to scale it up. And just on the new tools, I think people touched about the funding. We all have dreams of getting diagnostics that should be deployed in the periphery, simple to use, in the community, ultimately a self-test, blood-based. A test that can also test for not just disease, but infection, drug resistance, all of that together, right? We are not there. Now, we also need a treatment that has to be shorter. Great progress has been made, 4 months treatment, 6 months drug resistant TB treatment, not yet scaled up, but we should aim for a 1 month treatment. That should be feasible. We should also think about, as Mel said, 1.5 billion, 2 billion people are infected in the world. I'm one of them, latently so-called infected. How do we identify? How do we protect them so that they don't get it? We don't have good tools for that. So let me just touch upon what is needed in terms of resources, because this is what we tried to do from StopTB partnership when we did this global plan to NTB. What are the resources needed to NTB? And it's very good to see in the draft political declaration from the UN high-level meeting. We hope it will be approved. There are a lot of challenges, as many of you know. $5 billion per year is needed. So, and this is for research into new diagnostics, new medicines, new vaccines, as well as basic research. $5 billion per year. And how much do we have? About 1/5 of that. So that's the status now. But the same global plan also has produced a argument of an investment case type of argument, where if you invest, what happens, and if you don't invest, what happens. So if you invest $1 in TB care and prevention, scale it up, it gives you a return of $40. That's an excellent return on investment. On the contrary, if you do not invest, and especially if the new tools are delayed, there is analysis there which shows that the loss, but the cost of inaction could exceed $1 trillion, not billion, $1 trillion over several years. Right? So we have a good economic case to make that presentation. But this is an old disease. People have lived with this for ages. So I think that the sense of speed and urgency needs to come in. And I think what COVID showed, and as Mike mentioned, that previous panelists mentioned, 1 year to vaccine, not just vaccine, but vaccination, few weeks, few months to scaled up diagnostics everywhere, even in airports, right? That can be done for TB is no less a pandemic. It's an airborne disease. It is a big killer. You know the numbers. So we should put that sense of urgency and the speed. I think that is very important. In that context, let me just quickly jump over to the use of new tools. Let me give you an example. We talked about vaccine here. Today, we have a tool to protect us from TB, those who are latently infected, right? It's called PPT, TB preventive. But look at the target that was set in the last 2018 UNHLM and where we have progressed so far. Very poor progress, right? Now, if you think about a vaccine, which is of similar efficacy, by the way, the vaccines are almost similar efficacy as PPT, but vaccines do have some advantages. How do you expect that if a vaccine comes, then we can scale it up? Because we haven't done that in TPT. So we need to get prepared, and that is very important. The TB programs historically have dealt with patients who come to you, right, in the health system, but have not dealt with healthy people who you are trying to protect with the vaccine or a preventive tool. That is something that we need to look at. And I think COVID gave us good experience of how to do that and how to get prepared. So from StopTB partnership, we are committed to support in developing new tools, as well as the deployment and scale up of new tools. We have several initiatives. The three new tools working groups are here in the room. We have several projects like TB Reach, INTP, RTC. These also help countries in demonstrating how to use new tools with best potential, and then that helps in scaling up further. So I would stop here, but I would encourage you all to think about speed as very important. There are many ideas, many things in the pipeline, but how we can fast track them through resources, through better, faster research techniques, and faster scale up of those tools. And also, I would suggest to keep thinking about how we keep the people affected by TB at the center of what we are trying to do. I think very good comment by Hidato on the last mile. But we should also think about how do we make the last mile as the first mile. Sitting here in New York, we think last mile as very distant away, but if you step into the shoes of the people there, that's the first mile there. So I think the people-centric approach will be very good. So I will stop there. Thank you.
So it's my pleasure now to invite our distinguished panelists to the front on the seat. I will introduce them as they come forward. We have the chairs up here for you. We have a good amount of time, about 25-30 minutes. So that's what we're going. And I don't know if the screen is going to stay there. Okay, to dim the lights. So but please, so our first panelist is Dr. Max from State Health. Lord Nick Herbert, co-chair of the Global TB Caucus and a founding member of the Global TB Caucus. And returning to the stage, our friend Louis Cepeda from Philippines TB People. So I'm going to say stand. I'm going to run microphones to you as I ask questions to you. I'm going to start with questions, then we'll go to the floor. So think about questions that you want to ask and try to make questions. The statements are wonderful, but if you're going to make a statement, at least make it something you want someone specific to react to, because we want to get some level of participation. And I want to start by thinking about assets, and really turning to the asset side of it, recognizing that education actually is about as two halves. There's the research side, but there's also the side where you make it. And that's starting to be fun. And I want to start with our representatives from countries and get your perspective. Sadhu said that we need to keep speed in mind. And so, Dr. started with thinking about South Africa as a country that often is very speedy in adopting new TB innovations out in front. That was certainly the story with Baffin for South Africa. There's a lot more of that sooner than other places. I'm wondering if you can reflect on how you can create an enablement and enablement environment for CPs. And the policy action from the Ministry of Health. Great. And yet, the United States sort of unique. Uniqueness. Because think about access is right.
Thank you. Thanks for the beautiful talk. Thank you organizers for putting this together. Worked in TV for a long time, so it's like new faces, very long, familiar faces, and pleasure to be here. And thanks for bringing up access. Thanks for bringing up the role that universities have today. In facilitating access to tools, to supporting research and development of new tools, and to do that in a holistic way. So it's really, I have to say, I admire the way the schedule was made to highlight not just diagnostics and isolation, not just when it comes to therapeutics and isolation, not just vaccine isolation, a concerted effort together. And so I think, Mike, to your point, we very much appreciate the spotlight on Unity's contribution to R&D. I would say that is a little surprising because our focus is more on the method lab. And so we don't tend to fund huge early stage R&D projects. There's a lot more needed there in terms of funding. We've heard that today. But we really do try to anticipate and think through what it's going to take to see those products and to see those realized. Because again, innovation is not that works. It's great to have a product, but in order for that product to work and to see its full potential, it means reaching people who benefit and equitably across populations, across people who may have different health conditions, including different geographies, whole gamut. So I think my main takeaway on access and how that figures in the conversation today is that access cannot be access has to be designed into, built into research and development efforts. They have to be conversations, conditions, thinking that's built in from the very beginning of research development, placing product development, figuring out how these tools can be deployed, and figuring out also funding the role of civil society leaders in responsible demand creation, treatment and diagnostic literacy, stewardship, and a lot of the things that are so tricky to get right, but really critical to research. So I hope that there are a lot of them. So I really do appreciate that. And I think main things not as something that we solve later, but something that's built in through the whole.
Built in through these conversations. Yep. So this is our second. If you were here, you've seen both, you participated in both processes, and it made me awkward to answer this question with facilitator reps right in front of you. But I'm wondering if you have the team that's my experience looking at the research process, it seems know this part.
We have questions. Yes.
I think we saw around little definitions. Focus on five things in terms of definitions, reset targets that get us back on track to NTD by 2030 and pass back to 2070 R and D. And then, as we've heard today, we looked at, for instance, the declaration in 2018 spent $2 billion each year on R&D. We know that only about a third of that was raised. So now we have the new declaration that some has increased because the time taken by short. So now we need $5 billion. That's what it says in the declaration. Maybe one. So the how do you ensure that declaration is translated into action? You know, that's the key question. Now we can point to COVID and we can say, well, COVID is in pushed aside, as we all know, you know in the TV world, better than I, an enormous amount of resources was devoted. Now we're in a situation short. But I think the real challenge is, of course, these doctors and other things. Once this declaration is passed, how do we ensure that such the end is to translation these ambitions into specifics that are meaningful functions, which is why actually is linking this, so it's important to understanding exactly what each country is doing, what their share is. And so just in conclusion, a network of mind thousands this is, and it's much harder for farmers to answer precisely what they should. Perhaps a and so translating it into specifics that everybody can understand, including the farmers actually must make the ability to ensure in the years after those conversations, no one is you are not actually your share of what is needed for activity. That is what we are doing. If we're not going to see a repeat of the history 2018
and the down really has one part. I think it's making credit to the declaration that doesn't say we need to build it down. With the science feel very hard sometimes. Sometimes it's that the tools have created. We talked about that. Sometimes it's that they've been created, that they're not available for the person who needs them. I'm wondering, from your perspective, what can be done to sort of bridge the gulf between research? How can communities get involved in research on the other side? Thanks.
People who are just very version of that utilize crucial and both sides of the country. We were requesting more more understanding. We have our option 3 and 5. That's obviously so and also things being like, and that's what we would look at the whole the this implication on each document, how to understand it has updated meetings, project seeing that there's monthly participation, even if we can definitely increase demand. We're the ones, we're actually the one who can implement, let's ask our to implement the demand tools and actually the ones who can base our government. All of these inclusions and so I have a problem with my situation for us is the sectors we seen as just it's the one thing is so the way that I was able to prepare ask all of speakers to get us involved. It was now being recognized by the government that we are actually the ones who believe that it's really very but I also have problems like recently we have one stuff on months just because the national platform, the regional they want to provide productivity. So those kinds of information that they're not allowed to do. We need to help monitor what's happening. We have a program, look for reason to where to look for funds to make sure the progress. So there are this information that's happening because there's used to be a picture. So we have to
Very well said. I think it's sort of an old-fashioned activity, but when you take the time to talk to communities about the science, you allow them to then hold governments accountable, to ask informed questions, to be seen as experts, to drive demand, and that has to be a part of the R&D process. So I'm turning to the floor now. We have about 5 to 10 minutes for questions and comments that you want reactions to. And I'll run the mics. So I'll you first, you second, and I'll do the third. We'll see where we go after.
So Mike mentioned seems very fixed and bringing patients on how do as a that all these areas should or be encouraging new developers and make sure that these funds create competition, but also
I don't know who wants to take that one. Janet, yeah, you invest in the portfolio. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know if I have a correct answer, but I think one of the critical elements of that is figuring out how each individual tool can be used and how that is for costs. Test, treat, prevent, adherence, monitor, and follow loss. And so I think really that was which understanding of this space any individuals is really critical to
define evolving strategy for and how that different from now saying get to something ultimately that's for some of the diagnostics. We're not there, right? So I think it's really thinking about right. 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 Yes. Just to do this. That's good. We need to use the two. We know that there's multi-dimensional. We also all of this, the next comes back. When you have what exactly?
How do we know when our job is done or when we've done it well? And you can start, Janet. I feel like Dr. Maxey and Robert, you probably have ideas on this too.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. I can offer ideas and perspectives, but I would love to hear also from country program colleagues as well, or living on this today. From our side, Unity is really dedicated to realizing equitable access to schools. We think about that in terms of innovation and availability, that the tool is developed in the first place, which is fit for purpose, that it's responding to country priorities and needs defined by and the communities. We're looking at products that are quality assured, affordable, for within the scale, that we resolve and address supply and deliver supply and delivery vulnerabilities, so that we don't see the stock out already now, and crucially, demand adoption. And I think often that's overlooked, but for the engaging communities in terms of the demand creation, diagnostic literacy, understanding the use case for different tools, how they get integrated into programs. So we look along all of those different facets as we try to support in our work with NCB, with Pride, with Alliance, and others. But I would love to hear too. Thank you.
That's very important question. So, what else mentioned something? You're wrong. Yeah, so really, these are all considerations that we have said. So, Just the analysis is there.
So we're running late, as we always do. It's fine. But we do have two special guests who are going to make time for them. So we're down to, I'm going to take two final comments. We won't necessarily get a reaction. Just so two more people have the chance to speak. My friends in the second row, I saw you. So we're going to go to you, Dave. You still want to talk. There are people behind you. And yeah, let's end with our TV advocates and survivors speaking. I come from civil society, so I'm always going to end there. Start with end there. If I didn't get you, I'm sorry. But that's my
Thank you very much. My question, we go to the from the reasons that is the top TV focus. Most of the that we made that is okay. And comment talked about the need to in the process, especially my question is, what's the what investment is the next week to drive the role of maintenance
It's we so how about the deepening our this will be in right now. It's we need support which is the context of us. We
for this.
Only keep the short because I have a response from UK. I, for once, I'm a huge fan of UK. You guys have done some amazing work with therapy, not state, particularly for everything with children,
sensitization of process. I think you guys have been find the intention of organizations like you to invest in that. And you know, and we saw what you did with malaria vaccine. You guys made huge stories. I just want to understand from your perspective what would it take for you and organizations to do what you can purposes. And so we need organizations like you on board. Please let me know what you're doing. Thank you.
This is a great question, very targeted. Jen, any quick thoughts? And then you and Ray can talk.
I'll be very short. I think first of all for the recognition, and it's really important for us to be able to. And very happy to continue the conversation on vaccines. We're thrilled to see that progress. We continue to support CPT for preventive therapy, obviously that too. The malaria vaccine is interesting on a lot of different levels, also because it shares an adjuvant with the TB vaccine. So there's a lot we can share in terms of our thinking, understanding our lessons we learned through that process, but also
Please join me in thanking our panelists. I'm going to hand you back over to Priyanka. Finish today's event. Priyanka. Return your seats.
For the next part, I'd like to call upon Secretary Katerina Gershekla Kowska. I'm so sorry if I have been with your name. Director of National Cooperation Bureau, Ministry of Health of the Republic of Poland. And I note here that it's called Poland is the co-facilitator for the HLM.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting us, and also the panelists, experts, and you, distinguished guests, for attending today's fruitful discussion about ending TB. Why is this so important? As Louis previously said, she was lucky to survive the TB. I wish we never talk about how lucky we are to have survived. I am convinced that patients' future is in our hands. We can make a change and we can end TB. After some of today's presentations, we know that a whole system approach is required. That means not only the healthcare system, it is also about the political debate. As it was already mentioned a few times today, at the 2018 United Nations General Assembly meeting on TB, we agreed that TB was a national and global health threat of the highest priority, signing a historic declaration that promised universal access, multi-sectoral responses, innovative tools, and accountability for progress against the epidemic. Despite ambitious commitments contained in the declaration, there are still many challenges in ending TB. That is why this year's political declaration, which will be endorsed by heads of states and heads of the governments, will be critical to renew commitments, promote political visibility of key challenges in TB, and to mobilize funding and action to properly address them both at domestic and international level. We need to get the TB response back on track to reach TB targets and save lives. I am convinced that the intergovernmental process leading to the high-level meeting have been critical to promote political visibility of key challenges in TB. Taking into account the fact that this year we will have 3 consecutive health-related General Assembly high-level meetings with close links and synergies between them, I believe we can make a significant progress in fighting TB. I encourage all stakeholders to act together and increase our commitments to prove that we can reach SDG target 3.3 and end the global TB epidemic by 2030. Thank you.
Your Excellency, and now I invite His Excellency Pakpuri Gunadi Sadikin, Minister of Health of the Republic of Indonesia, to provide the closing remarks. And I'd like to thank the Ministry of Health of the Republic of Indonesia for honoring as the today's event at Coast.
Thank more than 10 million people and kill 4,000 people in a day. So Indonesia ranked number 2 globally. The worst, not the best. And as we are trying to, eliminate tuberculosis, we realize that the TB tools are antiquated. I will start with the vaccine. We had the BCG vaccine that has been there for 100 years, but then the efficacy is very, very low. That's why Indonesia next year will participate in the clinical trial number 3 for Bill and Melinda Gates GSK vaccine. We are also participating in 2 clinical trial number 1 with BioNTech Germany for mRNA-based tuberculosis vaccine, and also with CanSino Biotech in China for viral vector-based vaccine. So starting next year, Indonesia will participate in 3 new vaccine development. I realize that I only have 1 year left working as Minister of Health, but hopefully I leave some legacy for the next minister. On the diagnostic itself, I feel it is very extremely difficult, to get the Sputnik, and it's also very expensive to test for tuberculosis. And I just arrived from Global Fund meeting, and I'm very happy that Global Fund announced a 30% discount for gene expert candidates for next year. So I hope that will reduce the cost. But what we are doing now, we are learning from our colleagues in India that they have a TrueNet device that we are using. And we have also realized that the fact we have 1,000 PCR labs, we have improved because of the COVID-19. So we are developing a reagent that can do testing the same molecular biology technology using the PCR machine for tuberculosis. So those are on the diagnostic part, and I still believe that while we already have sample genome sequencing device now, we can make it easy for us also to identify the type of the variant of the bacteria, so we don't have to do trial and error while we are applying medicine to resistant TB. On the therapeutic side, Indonesia this year launched a national rollout of DPEL and DPEL app, because we realized it takes so long for TB resistant to have treatment. So that's why by having this new gene that reduces the length of the treatment to 6 months, I do hope that will increase the effectiveness and the result of that. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very committed to end TB by 2030. Our president has issued presidential regulations 2 years ago that it gives instructions to 15 ministries to work together with the lead from the Minister of Health. And I do hope that if Indonesia, ranked number 2, from the bottom can solve this problem, that will give some impact
to the other countries. And I do hope we can eliminate this ancient disease that has been with us for more than 100 years and kills millions of people. And hopefully our children and the children of our children will live safer and healthy. Thank you.
You and on behalf of FINE, TB Alliance, and IAVI, as well as the co-sponsors, the Ministry of Health of the Republic of Indonesia and the Government of Netherlands, it has been a pleasure to host all of you. The event organizers tell me that I should request all the panelists and the speakers to please come to the front of the room so that we can take a picture together. And for people who are joining us for lunch, the lunch is available and served outside. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today, and thank you for your commitment to ensure that new tools are actually available and accessible to the people who need it most. Thank you so much.